What are we doing wrong? Why aren't more people staying? I'll offer a few thoughts. We learned a lot in religious education. We learned about different religions, various spiritual books, and famous Unitarians. One thing we didn't learn much about, though, was actually going to church, actually coming in the sanctuary. When we were very young, we cried too much. Y'all didn't want us in here. In our elementary school years, we didn't understand the material. We had no idea what the people up in front were talking about. We were invited to the service once a month for about 10 minutes. I love the children's story Northwoods now does every Sunday. I think it's a huge step. In our teen UU years, our worships were separate from the rest of the church. Worship was done in circles, and readings and sharing took place in lieu of a sermon generally. So when we get thrown bodily from UU at age 18, 19, 20, and are told to go to real church, sometimes in a new city, it can be frightening and spiritually hollow for some. Another reason for the sudden drop-off could be the very success of UU. Our teen groups here and throughout our faith are incredibly close, nurturing, and intense. Sometimes leaving that community just makes everything else pale in comparison. Third, there's an old UU line that goes, Unitarian Universalism, where all your answers are questioned. We are taught to search for the right questions so we can discover our right answers. Independence and a freedom for that personal search for truth are paramount to our faith. Perhaps that message means that some people search on their own. They don't believe that they need the liberal church they grew up in. Or as a wise man once said, be careful what you ask for. If we instill independence within them, they may decide to use that independence and not stay with us. So if they might leave anyway, why is it important to keep improving, to keep welcoming, to keep nurturing? To answer that, to begin to answer that, I'd like to tell you a brief story about my paternal grandmother. Electa Wiley is 90 years old. Her family had no education beyond 8th grade, and yet she has 2 postgraduate degrees and served as a college professor for decades at Arkansas Pine Bluff, a historically black college, among others. She has always been a mentor and educator and teaches the Wiley family to this very day. Those of you who know my dad and back Rob Wiley can tell she did a wonderful job of instilling a tradition of intelligence. Maybe too wonderful, I sometimes think. After all, for my 8th birthday, my presents from him were the front page of the New York Times and a copy of Why the Allies Won. So, having said all this, one might think my grandmother's idol would be someone like Sidney Poitier or Langston Hughes, and she reveres them, certainly. At the top of her current list, though, is actually Tim Duncan. Yeah. Tim Duncan is a star power forward for the San Antonio Spurs. At the risk of turning the Northwoods pulpit into the set of Sports Center, Duncan entered the NBA in 1998 and has led San Antonio to 4 NBA championships. He's been to the NBA All-Star game 11 times and holds numerous basketball records. Anytime the Spurs are on TV, you can be sure Electa Wiley is watching. But why does my grandmother, who lives in southwest Arkansas, look up to a basketball player nearly 60 years her junior? It's simple, my grandmother told me. He's dependable, he makes everyone around him better on the court. He's educated, he's soft-spoken, and he cares about his teammates. The way he carries himself, you can tell he doesn't see his teammates as less, as them, as other. He's thinking, it's not about me, it's about us. It's not about me, it's about us. Something we struggled with in my UU days was figuring out what we could rally around. In a group where no 2 sets of beliefs are the same, this proved to be a tough task. In 2005, as worship coordinator at SWUSI, our summer camp, I led what became known as the I Am the Flame worship. The point of that worship was that I asked each person to take a turn and come up to the middle and shout to the sky, I am the flame. And each declared, and so we declared that we are not only the chalice, but our interdependent web meant that each of us is the flame as well. It is everyone, it is each of us individually, and it is no one. When people walk in here at age 4 or age 80, I believe that something lights a fire within, a flame. This is what drives us, this is what sustains us, this is what we rally around. That common cause, that common search for something, for the right questions, for the right answers. I believe that there is a flame in each of us. We are constantly searching. People like me who grew up here, we are constantly searching. Ian Holt sent me an email recently, and he said, I want you to give a message to Northwoods. He said, I suppose if I were to say something, I would say that everything I needed to know, I learned from Ross Henry. As my RE teacher, he gave us respect and treated us with dignity, even though we were only 12 years old, running around with lightsabers and playing with Legos and a light-up time machine. I brought everything I learned from him and put it into UU and everywhere else in my life, and truly tried to live as an example of my religious background. Ian went on to say that Northwoods has shown him that we are all just as human as anyone else, subject to the same pettiness and feelings of self-importance at times. He said he was dedicated to Northwoods 1 month and 14 days after he was born. He doesn't go to church regularly now. Ian was dedicated just as I was, just as many of us are. As I said, I'm the exception, not the rule. But Ian called Northwoods his home, his refuge, his sanctuary. And the thing that he learned most from Northwoods is to accept change. Nothing stays the same, and acknowledge when it is time to leave.